Hello, everyone, and welcome to our barbecue night event with Adrian Miller and John Shelton Reed. My name is Talia. I'm the events manager here at Flyleaf Books. If you're new to the store, I encourage you to browse our full events calendar by clicking the Flyleaf Books logo above us. And please do follow us on Crowdcast so you don't miss anything. We have some great upcoming events, as well as our first forays into hybrid events, and the information about those is available on our website. If you'd like to support the store and our guest tonight, please keep in mind that we do have copies of both of these authors' books available here at Flyleaf. We're open for browsing, so you can come in and shop in person, or you can click the link just below our faces to buy your books. If you've already bought your copies but you'd like to support the store, there is also a small donate button below our faces, and you can send us just a few dollars if you are able, and that does help us continue to offer programming for y'all. All right, I will go ahead and introduce our authors so we can get started. First up, John Shelton Reed has written a dozen books, innumerable articles, and a country song about the South, to name a few of his works. His writing has been described by the Washington Post as provocative, instructive, and amusing, and by the San Francisco Review as funny and erudite and annoying. He has been the chancellor of the Fellowship of Southern Writers and is co-founder and eminence grise of the Campaign for a Real Barbecue. For some years, he taught at UNC, where he helped to found the UNC Center for the Study of the American South and was co-founder of the quarterly Southern Cultures. His new book is On Barbecue. And Adrian Miller is a certified Kansas City Barbecue Society judge and the recipient of a James Beard Foundation Book Award for his book Soul Food, The Surprising Story of an American Cuisine, One Plate at a Time. He is a consultant on Netflix's Chef's Table Barbecue, and his most recent book is Black Smoke, African Americans and the United States of Barbecue. Thank you both so much for joining us tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my camera and microphone to give you the floor. So I'd love you to just introduce your books and then have a little talk about your process for writing them and anything you'd like to talk to each other about. We'll just have an organic conversation.
Oh, cool. Right. All right. Sounds good. Hey, John, I'm going to give the floor to you because, I want to recognize greatness, and you have a much cooler hat on than I do. So,
yeah.
Go ahead. Why don't you go ahead and talk
Yeah. We're driving across the country, went to California to see my daughter. We're on our way back, and I'm in Memphis right now. I'm sitting in a room in the Peabody Hotel, and I just got back from the rendezvous where I had some ribs to start the afternoon off right. I'm happy to go first because it lets me say something serious. Listen, Adrian, as you heard, has won James Beard Award, and if he doesn't get another one for this book, there's something wrong, because this is a terrific book. It's a really great book, and I'm not even jealous because he did so much work for it. I saw him do some of it. He's really did the grunt work of digging in and talking to people. My book is largely stenographic. I collected a bunch of stuff that I've written before. I wrote 3 or 4 new things, but it's a collection of essays and reviews and op-ed pieces, odds and ends, all of which have to do with barbecue. And at some point, I realized I had enough of this stuff put together to make a small book. So that's what I did, and that's what this is. And I hope people will read it and enjoy it, but it's not James Beard Award material, and Adrian's is. So I hope you don't have to choose one or the other, but I know which one I'd choose if it were up to me. Your turn, Adrian.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, man, because I respect what you do. A lot of your work informed my work. So, man, that's just thanks for giving me that love. I really appreciate you. One quick question for you before I start. Does the South begin in the lobby of the Peabody Hotel? Is that right?
I've always heard that. It goes to, Catfish Row in Vicksburg or something like that. Yeah, well, at the moment, the lobby of the Peabody Hotel is full of tourists who've gathered there to watch the Ducks Parade, which they should be doing just about now. They go into the elevator and go up to their place on the roof. I didn't see any planters down there. I don't think they're around anymore, but I did see some girls dressed like Southern Belles. I don't know what they were up
to. So for those watching, I'm Adrian Miller. My book's called Black Smoke, African Americans, the United States of Barbecue. And I wrote this book to be 2 things. One, a celebration of African American barbecue culture, and then a restoration of African Americans to the barbecue narrative. Because unfortunately, African Americans aren't getting much love when it comes to barbecue storytelling. They're either bit players or left out entirely. and that didn't square with my experience. So now I just need to admit something that's going to immediately lose me all street cred on the subject of barbecue. I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado, but let me win you back. My parents are from the South. My mom's from Chattanooga, Tennessee. My dad's from Helena, Arkansas. So these are the food traditions that I grew up eating. And so in my book, I take a look at the early history of barbecue, which is hazy because it's not well documented. And sometimes the people doing the documenting didn't do a very good job of it, or they had agendas. But I wanted to suss out kind of how do African Americans get so strongly associated with barbecue, show that connection over time. And then I just look at different aspects of Black barbecue culture. So church barbecue, competition barbecue, and I explore this question of, is there a barbecue aesthetic? You know, what makes the way African Americans encounter barbecue different? And then I end the book by just kind of giving my thoughts about where barbecue is going. But some of the most fun I had in writing this book is I actually tried to find people in history that it really evoked the themes of my chapters. And so finding those people and being able to share their story was a lot of fun. So that was my approach to it. So John, let me ask you, you've written a lot about barbecue, and I love your kind of current, you're writing about the current state of barbecue and things like that. But when you're thinking about barbecue these days, what are some of the things that are just on the top of your mind? I'm just curious.
Well, Adrian, as you know, I just wrote a piece for a special issue of the magazine of the Southern Foodways Alliance that Adrian is editing. And I used it basically to complain about all the things I don't like about what's happening in the world of barbecue today. So being, almost 80 years old, the things that I don't like tend to be at the top of my mind, because of the territory. So I do a lot of complaining about various trends. You can still get good barbecue and lots of it, and some of the trends, they're not all bad, but one of the things that really disturbs me, especially in North Carolina, is that a majority of the places that say they're selling barbecue in North Carolina don't use any wood at all to cook it. And as far as I'm concerned, that's part of the definition. If you cook it with gas, you can put all the sauce you want on it. It's not barbecue. I mean, it's not. Putting barbecue sauce on it doesn't make it barbecue any more than putting kosher salt on it makes it kosher. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So I've got and other people may have heard, they just did hear that Dan Levine and I have started some time ago an organization called the Campaign for Real Barbecues to honor people who do it the old-fashioned way with wood. And they're not quite an endangered species. I mean, there are some new guys coming up now, I'm delighted to say, who are doing it the old way, and that's a terrific development. But we don't actually go out and name the people who ought to be ashamed of themselves, but they know who they are. They know what they can do.
Yeah. Do you think it's a capacity issue? Is it because of barbecue's popularity that people are moving to gas just because they want to cook a whole bunch of meat and electricity is the way to go? Is that what's going on?
Well, that's part of it. Although, again, talking about North Carolina, Wayne Monk and Chip Stamey and Wilbur Shirley, formerly and again, cook industrial quantities of barbecue, and they do it the absolute right way. So people who say you can't do it are wrong. It costs more, and it's harder, and it is less reliable. The cooking with gas gives you a reliably, I won't say mediocre, but a reliably unexciting product time after time after time.
Yeah.
So, if I were running a barbecue place, which thank goodness I'm not, I don't work that hard. But if I were, I'd understand the temptation. I really would to switch over, especially since, as seems to be the case, your customers don't notice. I mean, they should, but people don't complain.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get them to complain.
Yeah. Now I know my book is, and as your book as well, is rooted in the past, but I do think a lot about kind of the current state of barbecue and the future of barbecue. And, that's why I'm really excited about a couple of guys out of the Carolinas, Rodney Scott and Ed Mitchell and his son, Ryan, who are really trying to bring this gospel of whole hog barbecue to other parts of the country. And I do wonder if there's an appetite for that, because I got to tell you, and you probably have a sense of it, I got to tell you, outside the South, especially outside of Carolina barbecue has a horrible reputation. And I think the reason why is because so many people are not making it well. They're not really staying true to the tradition. And so they're making all their barbecue one way and they're saying, hey, make it Carolina style by just dumping all this vinegar on there. And I'm telling people that's not that's applied through the whole process, right? There's a whole ritual to it. So, yeah.
We call it sauce. We call it sauce, but it's really more seasoning. You put it. It doesn't float in a pool of this stuff. You add a sprinkling of it. It's like putting salt and pepper on it. It's vinegar and pepper. But anyway, also have one people outside Carolina don't like North Carolina stuff. South Carolina mustards and other things together. One reason they don't like it is they're just not used to it. I mean, they went to the grocery store, got Kraft barbecue sauce, this Dr. Ketchup stuff, and they think that's what barbecue is supposed to taste like, So, I mean, they're just surprised is all. They get this vinegar punch. And pepper kick. It's something different.
Yeah.
But, Adrian, something I wanted to ask you, we could go on this, get back to this in a minute. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I really found fascinating about your book was your discussion of the differences between black and white barbecue. Because I've many times, I've been going along saying, well, everybody believes there's a difference, but there really isn't. But now you come along and say, well, yes, there is after all. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So to me, a lot of the black barbecue that I found has been cooked directly over the heat source. Usually charcoal is involved. And so I really think that charcoal taste, that flavor is part of a signature of African-American barbecue. And, there's a lot of talk now that true barbecue is low and slow. But I got to tell you, man, I know a lot of African-American barbecuers who cook hot, fast, then slow, depending on the cut of meat and other things. And I find that African-American barbecue tends to be, once you get away from whole animal cooking, right, tends to be less butchered. So I think about my favorite thing. My touchstone is spare ribs. And so in a lot of black joints, that rib tip's going to be attached. It's not going to be that St. Louis cut. And even that flap, that kind of flap, almost like a biscuit. Yeah, that's going to be there. Fattier, so just less butchered, and then definitely sauce. In fact, every time I hear, because I think there's an emerging conventional wisdom that good barbecue should be unsauced. I'm going to go out on a limb and say a lot of African Americans would respond. Says who? Because I've been in a lot of joints, man, where I got a plate of barbecue with an ocean of sauce with little islands of smoked meat poking through. And I think if you're gonna have a standardized African American barbecue menu, it's gonna be spare ribs, chicken, and hot links. I think brisket is more of a very regional thing. It's part of some very storied traditions, but I didn't see it in a lot of places. Oh, I would add pork shoulder to that as well. I would say that's kind of the core menu. Yeah.
Yeah, this business about sauce. I mean. If you're right, and I have no reason to doubt you, what black folks are saying is what Kansas City says, which is that sauce is an important part of it. But maybe I sometimes think that the important part. I mean, you got guys like Henry Gates. I think he said one time, he put my sauce on cardboard, it tastes good. So, yeah, right. The other view is the Texas view, which until recently said, don't mess up this great meat by putting sauce on it.
Yeah.
And those two traditions, Kansas City and Texas, are the ones that are making inroads elsewhere. I hate to say it, but Carolina barbecue, well, don't hate to say it, but Carolina barbecue is not being found widely outside the Carolinas, and that's okay with me, because I really value these regional traditions. I like Texas barbecue, but I liked it better when I had to go to Texas to get it.
Yeah, I don't know about you, man, but I think Central Texas barbecue is the default barbecue style now. And I just look at it. I just look at a place like Denver. So we've had in the last year maybe 8 new places open up. 6 of them are Central Texas barbecue, and the aesthetic, what the menu is, they're serving it on 10 plates with butcher paper. I mean, it's that whole vibe. And I'm like, look, I mean, I like Central Texas and stuff, but there's so many other different traditions. I would love to have a great North Carolina place here in Denver. I just don't know how well it would do.
Yeah. I'm not going to invest in it. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned earlier that there's a couple of young guys that you have caught your attention coming up. Do you mind sharing their names so we can watch them?
Well, you mentioned Juan Rodney Scott, of course. And I know he just got elected to the Barbecue Hall of Fame. and well deserved. He may be the youngest guy ever elected to it, but he's a fast mover. What he's doing is great. And Sam Jones, third generation barbecue guy from Ayden, North Carolina, very much the same pattern. He comes from a family tradition, and he's taken it to a new level, without departing from the tradition. He's just he does it absolutely right. Then there are these sort of oak barbecue, high barbecue places like Picnic in Durham, where Wyatt Dixon and his partners are doing whole hog barbecue. Absolutely right, completely cooked with wood. I mean, the sides of the desserts are kind of chefy, but that's fine. The barbecue is great, and in fact, I'm going to have I recommended him to cook for a wedding party.
Oh, nice.
They wanted to have a pig picking, and so I said, "Well, why don't you talk to Wyatt?" So, and then up in Asheville is Buxton Hall, and two guys up there cooking whole hog barbecue. I mean, that's not native to the Asheville area, the whole hog tradition, but they don't really have a tradition up there. Matter of fact, that's one of the things I write about in my book is what's going on in the mountains. And I come from the mountains. I'm originally from East Tennessee. And we were a barbecue desert when I was growing up. Well, why is that? We're surrounded by good barbecue. We make great hams. We got the hogs, we got the wood. Why did it not? Anyway, there's an essay in there about that. And Asheville in Western North Carolina, they're developing their own style right now. And I think, 30, 40 years, we may have not two, but three distinctive North Carolina styles, each one of them putting down the other two.
I mean, because just the two styles alone have been caused a lot of fuss, and so add somebody else in the mix, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's fun, it's like Duke and Carolina. You just you pick your side and you trash talk the other.
Yeah. Hey, I've been grappling with something. So, and I wonder how you've approached this. So, several people have asked me, is barbecue really different from? And they're saying that that barbecue is universal, right? That everywhere around where you find human beings, it's wood, fire, and meat. And, I think there is something exceptional about barbecue. So I wonder, how do you respond to that question? That barbecue is no different than cooking meat over fire anyplace else.
Yeah. Well, I've always believed, Southerners believe that it's not barbecue if you don't call it barbecue. So somebody's cooking over fire but doesn't call it barbecue. Well, that's not barbecue, obviously. I was just in Santa Maria, California, last week, and ate that tri-tip stuff that I'd never heard of till recently. But in that part of California, down around San Luis Obispo, they're cooking tri-tip, which is a cut of beef, kind of steaky, and they grill it. I'd call it grilling. And they decided to call it barbecue. I don't know when they started doing that, but they're now arguing this is a regional style of barbecue. Well, if they want to call it barbecue, then fine. I'll call it barbecue too. But I wrote a cookbook a while back, and at the publisher's, more or less at the publisher's insistence, I put in a recipe for smoked mullet, which is basically barbecue mullet. I mean, if you look at the process, but they don't call it barbecue; they call it smoked mullet. I said, all right, here's what they do in Florida. They don't call it barbecue, but it is. Look at how it's done. But there are people in almost every culture. I'm sure there are exceptions; you could find them, but people know that if you got tough or gnarly meat, if you cook it for a long time at a relatively low temperature, it softens it up. And you can cook it. You can roast it, slow roast it. You can braise it. Any number of ways to get that effect. But that's been discovered everywhere. Almost everywhere.
Yeah.
So it depends what you mean by barbecue, whether everybody has it or not.
Yeah, and my thing, and I'm borrowing from Daniel Vaughn. If barbecue is not exceptional, then why are all these people traveling to the United States to learn how to cook it and grub on it, right?
Yeah.
So
Daniel Vaughn is the barbecue minister of Texas Monthly, and is a friend of both of us. Yeah, well, they're certainly traveling to the United States to learn how to do Texas barbecue.
Yeah.
And the Kansas City Barbecue Society, which sponsors all these barbecue competitions, nearly all of them around the United States. There's a Kansas City barbecue circuit in Europe. I ran into the guy that's in charge of it in France, and they're competing by Kansas City rules, cooking Kansas City required meats and all this stuff.
Yeah. So I was in Europe right before, I guess it was 2019. I was teaching at Slow Food University, and the semester was winding up, so the students were having a party. So I went there and was talking to this guy from Belgium, Brussels, and he was telling me how he was a big fan of Texas barbecue. And I said, "You are?" And he's like, yeah, I made a brisket the other day. And I said, "You did?" And he pulled out his phone, and I got to tell you, it was one of the most beautiful briskets I'd ever seen. And I asked him, I said, "Well, where did you learn to do that?" And he said, "Oh, I was watching Aaron Franklin's videos." And so, I think because of Aaron Franklin, Daniel Vaughn's writing, and others, I think just Texas is having a moment. I keep telling people that Texas has the best cheerleaders for their culture, man, because the barbecue, and now Juneteenth, even though there were all these different emancipation celebrations that happened, Juneteenth is now the federal holiday. So be proud of your culture, people. That's what we're telling you. Be proud of your culture.
Texas wins again. I'll confess, Adrian. I cooked a brisket one time. It was horrible. I mean, it was tough. It was disgusting, dry. My wife and daughters sent me to brisket camp at Texas A&M a couple of years ago, and Aaron Franklin was one of the instructors. It's 2 days of intensive brisket studies. I came back to Chapel Hill and I cooked a brisket. I got good meat, which is part of the secret. And I cooked maybe the best brisket I've ever eaten. And I'm not saying that just because I cook it. Of course, it's really good when it's straight off the pit.
Right.
It was so good I was scared to do it again because it wouldn't be as good. But I understand, but that's Texas barbecue.
Right.
I don't mind people selling it in North Carolina if they call it Texas barbecue. At the Rendezvous, where I was just over eating ribs, there's brisket on the menu now.
There is.
There is. That's not right, but there it is. Biggest lie, because they get Texans that come here and want barbecue.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, because one thing I brought up in my book is with this shifting expectations of what barbecue is. I wonder what the effect is going to be on Black barbecuers. Because most of the people that I encountered across the country, their specialty was pork. And now, because of, the customers are walking in the door expecting brisket, I'm seeing more and more brisket show up. And I got to tell you, it's usually not that great. It's just okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish people,
true.
Yeah, I wish people.
That's true. Most brisket.
Most brisket anyway.
No, not just saying that. I've got a daughter in Austin, but it's true. Most brisket cooked in North Carolina. Making it up as you go along, unless you go to brisket camp like me and learn how to do it from the masters. But
I'm gonna put that on my list. Go ahead.
So one of the interesting things coming out of the Black community in the Carolinas is barbecued turkey.
Yes.
That's really for health reasons, religious reasons, for whatever reason. They're accommodating people that don't want to eat pork, and they're doing it by barbecuing turkey. You and I went to Backyard Barbecue, and they have pretty good barbecued turkey.
Yeah.
It's side by side with the pork, and it's not as good in my view, but if you're not eating pork, it's mighty good.
Yeah. I thought it was tasty. And, I went to some Black-owned joints in Memphis. I saw pulled turkey, south side of Chicago, turkey hot links, turkey tips. And then in St. Louis, I don't know if you've ever had turkey ribs, where they take the shoulder blade and so it looks like a little, almost like a baby back rib. And so they take the shoulder blade and just cut enough meat around it. And so that's a St. Louis thing. So turkey is really strong in Black barbecue culture. And another thing that's happening, and I want to say this because I'm going to San Francisco this weekend, and I'm going to have my first taste of vegan barbecue. But there's a vegan barbecue joint called Vegan Mob. And I was just wondering your experiences with like jackfruit and other things. I'm seeing it more and more in Black barbecue. Are you seeing that show up?
Well, yeah, I am. I live in a place, Carolina Meadows. People in Chapel Hill will know what I'm talking about. Retirement community, and jackfruit barbecue turns up on the menu out there from time to time. It's I suppose it's better than nothing, but it's like it's not. It's like barbecue cooked without any wood, it's better than nothing probably. But
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not going to seek it out.
yeah. I'll have to report back. I'll tell you what's going on in California.
By the way, when you're in San Francisco, leave time to go to Horns if you haven't been there.
Oh, so here's the cool thing. I'm doing an event and Horns is going to do the catering.
Oh,
So
that's great.
I'm finally going to
Well,
get his barbecue. I've been wanting to have that for a while.
I went there for my first time, last week when I was in Oakland, and it's good. It's worth all the hype. I mean, I've had equally good barbecue in Austin, but the fact that you can do something like that outside of Texas, as good as that's remarkable, and he's doing it. It's Texas style.
Okay. For those who don't know, we're talking about Matt Horn, who is Horn's Barbecue. He runs Horn Barbecue in Oakland, and he's been doing it, I think, since 2016 or so as a pop-up, and now he's got a standalone restaurant stuff. So I'm eager to try his barbecue. So, hey, we're at almost at like a half an hour, so I think it would be fun to just take questions from the audience if you're down with that, unless you had something else you wanted to share. Okay. All right. You want to help us with questions from the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone watching has any questions, please use the Ask a Question feature or use the little chat on the side of your screen, and you can put your questions there. I'll read them out loud. I have a couple questions that I can go ahead and pose to you guys before we get the audience questions. So, John, your book is a compilation of reviews, essays, articles, a bunch of different things. Could you point us to a few of your favorite pieces that are included and tell us why you picked them?
Okay, hang on a second. Let me get my table up here in front of me. One of my favorites actually is not really an article. It's an interview that Dan Levine did with me and my wife Dale. Dan about our book Holy Smoke, and he got off into various questions about North Carolina barbecue, and he at that time was running a website called BBQJew, barbecuejew.com. So I'd spent some time. We had spent some time in Israel. I taught at the Hebrew University, so we talked about that. But also, I've got a lot of. There are books about the barbecue. Barbecue varies from state to state, and increasingly there are books about the barbecue in nearly every state. And I got to review most of them. So a lot of there's a review of a book about Kentucky barbecue and one about Alabama barbecue and like that. And it's fun to see what people say about the barbecue of different states, and particularly when you put them all together, it's more than the sum of its parts. I've got a piece in there about stuff that I wrote and couldn't fit into the book Holy Smoke, about the word barbecue and where it came from and how it developed and how its meaning changed. It was only in the late 19th century that people started talking about barbecue as something you could put on a plate. It was an event, it was a process. It was also the thing being cooked. You talk about getting a barbecue and putting it on the fire. But to say I got some barbecue and put it in a sandwich, that was not until the 19th century you started getting that kind of use. So anyway, there's a whole essay about the word barbecue, where it came from, how it changed. There's some stuff in here about the campaign for real barbecue that I talked about. We had a newsletter going for a while, and I reprinted some stuff from that. Let's see, what else might be of interest to people. I've got a lengthy piece. I was a judge one year at the Memphis in May barbecue competition here in May. I mean, it's right up the street from where I'm sitting, down in the banks of the Mississippi. There were 120 teams cooking barbecue, smoke drifting out. It was an amazing scene. This is down at the foot of some bluffs. There were kids bungee jumping from the bluffs. It was people handing out literature on what to do when the rapture happens. It was a marvelous experience. And I've wrote about that at some length. I was a rib judge, and I was thoroughly unqualified. Adrian, he's certified. He did the training. My training consisted of about an hour sitting in the movie theater being told what to look for in a rack of ribs. I think I did a good job given how little training I had, but this was 88 or something like that. They got more serious after that. I got to be a judge because my sister knew the woman that picked the judges. Anyhow, that was fun. It's really just I'm gonna say hodgepodge. It's a collection of miscellaneous pieces, united by the fact that they're all about barbecue one way or another, and by the fact that I wrote them. That's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. All right, I have a question for Adrian. So the subtitle of your book, African Americans in the United States of Barbecue, implies that barbecue is a uniter, at least within African American communities. So what is it, do you think, about this type of cooking or eating that breeds unity? Or, on the other hand, breeds division, depending on how you look at it?
Yeah, well, so I if you look at old school barbecue, that kind of barbecue, whole animal cooking, demanded community, because you had to bring a whole lot of people, to eat that food. And so I talk about the role of barbecue in building institutions. My argument is that preachers and politicians were the ones to really figure this out early, and understand that if you had some barbecue, that's a good way to get some folks there, and then maybe you can persuade them to do some other things. The Black church is a really important institution in the Black community. So I talk about how barbecue helped form sacred communities during slavery and after, and how that continued during the Great Migration. So I think it's really about building that community. And then, afterwards, when we get to the part where we're cooking smaller cuts of meat and things like that, it's about family life, either feature of family reunions and still church life and other things. But I just keep thinking about community, and because it's such delicious stuff, that brings people together. And I'm borrowing from Robert Moss, who's the barbecue editor for Southern Living magazine. I was persuaded by this. He was the first one to really point out that a lot of the regional styles that we argue about today are not as old as the whole animal cooking over a trench, right? Like, he argues that it really was a reflection of the shifting of barbecue's context from a rural setting to more urban. And that's when you start to see the focus on lesser cuts of meat. And so I really try to get people to think about barbecue in different ways, because there is a multiplicity to barbecue that spans time as well and place.
John, as somebody who's written about barbecue from all different kinds of places, do you feel like would you agree that it's something that unites people, or would you say that it can also divide people? I know people have very specific allegiances to the kind of barbecue that they enjoy.
Yeah, people do fight about it. In North Carolina, you've got the Eastern Piedmont thing over, whether there's any tomato at all in the sauce. Many people have pointed out, and I can do it because I'm actually from Tennessee, the two are very much alike. They're much more alike than either one is like what you find outside of North Carolina. But North Carolinians don't want to hear this because they enjoy the fight. And I can say I like Texas barbecue without feeling disloyal, because I'm not a North Carolinian, but originally. But people enjoy this. I mean, as I said, it's like football teams, or I don't know, Baptists and Methodists. I mean, there are all kinds of more or less friendly rivalries going on that tied into people's identities. The uniting feature to me has been, and I'm afraid we're losing this, the community barbecue tradition, which goes back to the 1600s, flourished in the 1700s and in the 1800s, well into the last century. People would get together or celebrate things, or to listen to political speeches, or to church homecomings, or building a new railroad. All kinds of occasions they'd have a barbecue and celebrate. And all sorts of people, all sorts of white people gathered, and Black folks were there, usually in a laboring role. And a couple of people at the time complained that they joined in too much there was a campaign in Alabama to do away with barbecues because they thought it was demoralizing to the community to have all kinds of people mixing it up at a barbecue. They were democratic occasions. They were. There was Spanish nobleman who was in eastern North Carolina when the Treaty of Paris was announced. They had a big barbecue, and he marveled at the fact that everybody was standing around drinking from the same cup, eating from the same hog. Well, that democratic thing very largely made the transition into restaurants, which emerged for the most part in the 20th century. It used to be you could go to a barbecue restaurant, and they didn't get much fancier than the kind that after church crowd went to. They didn't get there were joints that respectable people didn't go into because often they were beer joints that just happened to have some barbecue. Right? But your typical in North Carolina and elsewhere, your typical barbecue restaurant got all kinds of people. It got lawyers, it got policemen, it got teachers, it got laborers, it got electricians, it got the whole social range was scheduled there. And after 1965 and the 1964, the Civil Rights Act, increasingly had places where blacks and whites were there together, all kinds of folks. And you still have this at a lot of these places. Anybody can afford a $3.25 sandwich at Stamey's in Greensboro. And you go there, it's a nice range of people. And it's one of the few places these days where you get people from all walks of life sitting down and eating in the same place. You don't get that at churches much anymore.
Yeah.
And that's one reason I'm less than completely happy about the development, the rise of these new, what they call elevated barbecue restaurants. Because, the food is good, don't get me wrong. But first of all, to call it elevated implies that there's something lowly about what it's succeeding. I don't like the phrase for that reason. It's snobbish. But also, if you're charging $12 for a barbecue sandwich, you're not going to get the guys, the carpenters and the electricians and people like this are not going to come there for lunch. Just not. So you're narrowing your clientele in a social way. There's too much of that going on already in other spheres of life.
Yeah, and like $30 for a pound for brisket in some of these joints,
Yeah.
$24 for a whole chicken. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah. I've got an essay in here that's written actually for this book. It's not reprinted. It's one of the ones that is. So you call it elevated. I call it hinkty. Hinkty is a good expression. Look it up if you don't know it.
You've both commented a little bit about predictions about the future of barbecue. Could you both share a little bit of like your hopes for the future of barbecue and maybe your fears as well?
Yeah, so I fully went into my book expecting to have a very sad ending, like a very guarded and sad ending, just because of what I thought was happening with barbecuing. And I was just too focused on brick and mortar restaurants. Because there are definitely fewer of those around now than say 30 years ago. But now that I immersed myself and did this journey and started talking to people, I just see that it's just a shifting. We've got more people in food trucks. You still got the brothers and sisters on the side of the road and in parking lots, more often in strip clubs than I ever expected. But that's another story. Doing their thing. And so, I ended up being hopeful about African American barbecue. And John and I talked about this earlier. We're starting to see more bright signs in terms of recognizing African American barbecuers. Rodney Scott got the James Beard Award. John and I are involved in the American Royal Hall of Fame, and with the work of other colleagues, we've had more diverse classes the last 3 years. We still got work to do. Rodney Scott, going back to him, his book World of Barbecue, Rodney Scott's World of Barbecue, was the first barbecue book by an African American pitmaster in 3 decades. And I know of a couple other books in the pipeline. And then even on TV shows, we're starting to see more African Americans. So when I do my presentations, there's one graphic I show of this cover of this article from Bon Appetit magazine about who's who in American barbecue. And it's this very backyard barbecue. They're playing badminton, croquet, and all this kind of stuff. And I joke with people. I said, you remember the Where's Waldo cartoons of the 90s? I mean, the virtue of that is that Waldo was actually in the picture. And I said, where's the African American in this one? And there were no African Americans. And so we and that was in 2003. So I think we're definitely have made progress from that, but we do have a ways to go. So my hope is that in this moment, people will recognize African-American barbecuers and support them in the various aspects of business and through social media. There's so many ways to amplify people these days through platforms, and I just hope that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I started out by mentioning this essay in which I complain about all kinds of things, and a couple of things I didn't mention that I complained about, I'm afraid are powerful trends that need to be recognized and, if not offset, at least compensated for. One is competition barbecue, which by and large I think is a good thing. It's introduced a lot of people to barbecue, and they do cook with wood. They're required to cook with wood. On the other hand, it contributes to this leveling, this uniformity. Kansas City Barbecue Society, you're going to compete in their contest, you have to cook ribs and brisket and chicken and shoulder, all four. You have to cook all four. And you have to do this in North Carolina, where until recently, you could barbecue ribs, you could barbecue brisket, you could barbecue chicken, but they weren't barbecue when you've done it. Barbecue meant pork. So this leveling is going on, and competition barbecue is part of the reason for that. You need to resist that if we can. The other leveling, one of the other leveling influences is the spread of chain restaurants, or restaurants that want to become chains, that provide what I call an international house of barbecue menu, where you've got all the different kinds of meats, get all the different kinds of sauces, mix and match. Customers always right, and it's the same menu everywhere. That is everything everywhere, and that's insidious. I like Sam Jones's point of view, but down at the Skylight Inn in Ayton, he said when we interviewed him for Holy Smoke, he said, when you come here, it's not what you want, it's how much of it. they cook Eastern North Carolina barbecue. Take it or leave it, because you don't have it your way at the Skylight Inn. It's not Burger King.
Yeah. To that point about competition barbecue, that we should not overlook the profound effect that the TV show Barbecue Pitmasters has had in generating interest in competition barbecue, and also spilling it over into restaurant culture. Because as you probably noticed, John, as you go around, like how many trophies are in the lobbies of these restaurants now, because somebody does well in the competition circuit and they feel like they can pivot to doing restaurant. And to me, those are very different things, because in competition worlds, you're doing a lot to get that one perfect bite. And it's different to me than what you would do in a restaurant. But so, and then what people are doing at home. I think that show was revolutionary in its impact and influence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I sometimes think that if regional barbecue traditions are going to continue and remain regional, a lot of it's going to be up to home cooks. And, people in the North Carolina should learn how North Carolina barbecue is cooked and try to replicate it from time to time. Label it North Carolina barbecue. When I cook brisket, I label it Texas barbecue. I even have a Lone Star fly when I'm serving Texas barbecue. I want people to understand this is not our barbecue.
Right. And I hope people can embrace that nuance, right? Maybe people can't, but I hope they can.
We'll see.
We'll see.
How do you think about, I know as the United States, becomes increasingly diverse, I think over the past few decades, there's been more of a push toward like fusion cooking, or like a lot of in food truck culture, a lot of places really specialize in like Korean barbecue, or the list can go on and on and on. So I'm not going to go through that. But how would you think of like maintaining some kind of regional sensibility for barbecue while also like grappling with the fact that things are becoming more diverse and the positives and negatives of that?
Well, yeah, I guess I'm a little more forgiving about this. I just think if something becomes widespread in an area, then it's hard to argue that that's not a regional style. And let me tell you why I'm arguing this, because I want Denver to have a regional style. We used to have, we were known for lamb and bison, and we got away from it. And I'm trying to bring that back. So stay tuned on that. Give me a little bit of time. But the fusion part is already here. I mean, Tex-Mex and barbecue has already happened. So you've got brisket, breakfast tacos, and all that stuff. So it's already here. And so, I haven't processed that. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I've eaten at Valentina's Tex-Mex barbecue place in Austin, and it's really great. And it's Tex-Mex, and it's labeled Tex-Mex, so fine. They don't say this is traditional. They say this is not traditional, and the traditional you wanted is still here. They don't deny or erase the regional tradition. They just tinker with it. Same with the Heirloom Market in Atlanta, which is cooks. It's owned by an American guy and his wife who was a Korean pop star, and so they're using Korean sauces on Georgia barbecue, and it's wonderful stuff. But again, it's clearly labeled. It's theirs. It's idiosyncratic. They know it. So I don't think it's going to catch on and spread. I've tried to cook it myself, but that won't spread it. This business you mentioned of needing a Denver tradition, that I think is great. What happens in places that have lost a tradition is they typically bring in the International House of Barbecue, or they bring in a Texas place. But I like people who are trying to develop their own. Michael Simon, the celebrity chef, owns a barbecue place in Cleveland called Mabel's, and he's trying to develop Cleveland-style barbecue. And he's cooking with woods, and he's using a local mustard in the sauce. I don't recall what all he's doing, but he recognizes that Cleveland doesn't have a tradition. Other people do. Cleveland needs one, and rather than bring in somebody else's, he's going to try to develop his own. And I applaud that. I think that'd be wonderful if we had a dozen new regional traditions in the United States. I'd drive around and eat them all.
Yep. And I agree with you. I don't think you can really say someplace has a regional tradition unless people are cooking it in restaurants and at home. I think the home cooks part of it is really important. But we focus so much on restaurants that maybe I should walk that back a little bit. But my hope for Denver is that we create something where people are making it at home and you can get it at restaurants.
All right. So I'm not seeing any audience questions. It's a quiet audience night tonight. I'm gonna.
I see one.
Yes, one in the chat. Dick says, "Why don't we see more pork brisket?"
Is there? I guess I don't know my pig anatomy. Is the pork brisket the bacon? No, is that the? I guess it's on the side. I don't know. That's a good question, Dick. I don't know why we don't see more of that. Maybe because I don't know my pig anatomy.
Yeah, no, I've never heard of pork brisket. I guess if you take the part of the pig that cow's brisket, I don't think the word for it is it.
I don't know. I've just never heard that applied to a pig.
Yeah, and any butchers in the audience?
You got to stump, Dick. So great question. I'll have to research this after this interview.
Yeah, that's your.
If you eat whole hog barbecue, you're getting some brisket.
Yeah, there you go. There you
go.
go.
By default.
Yeah.
All right. We are going to go ahead and wrap up because I don't see any more questions. So I just want to give a few quick reminders before we go. Both Adrian and John's books are available here at Flyleaf. You can click the link just below our faces to buy your copies online, or you can come in and shop in person. Both of the books are in stock, and we have copies here at the store. So come in, stop by when we're open, and we'll be happy to hook you up. I also encourage you to click the Flyleaf Books logo above our heads and subscribe to our Crowdcast profile so you can see all of our upcoming virtual events. And I also do encourage you to subscribe to our store newsletter because increasingly we're going to have some hybrid events and, pivoting back toward in-person hopefully soon. So stay posted on all of our channels to get news about those. All right. Thank you so much for everyone who watched tonight. And thank you again to John and Adrian. Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Travel safe.